In this tutorial, I'll be talking about virtual types dependency injection. So let's get started. We are revisiting our gift wrapper company. As of today, customers can specify colors and size. But when customers specify color, we give them color of any brightness. When they specify a yellow color, we can give them a very bright yellow color, or a medium bright yellow color, or a yellow color that has low brightness. But some issues are arising now. Some of the buyers said they would like to specify the brightness of colors such that they can say, I need a small yellow pencil with high brightness, or a medium brightness, or a low brightness. So how do we solve this? We have to meet our injector, which is the object manager. Is there any solution? And the object manager said there is a solution. The solution is restructuring our codes and writing a new agreement. So let us do it. So this is the last state of our code. What we'll have to do now is our colors should be taking some constructor. That is, we have to inject our colors. We have to inject them with brightness. So let us create an interface called brightness in our API. So this is a class, but we need an interface. So we have an interface which is brightness here. So this interface can be injected into specific color implementation. For example, we'll be injecting our yellow class with that interface. So at first, let us copy the path to the interface. So let us import it here, as we have done in so many cases. I think I copied the wrong part. Okay, this is the path to the brightness interface. We'll be injecting this into the constructor of the yellow class. So let us create a constructor, public function. So this is a constructor, and we'll be injecting brightness so that we can specify the brightness of our color. So let us declare some member variables here. You can use the same name. And set the values here. Okay, let us do that for another color, maybe something like a red color, but I think we can just copy it. For a red color, let us import the interface. I think I still have a reference to it. No. So let me copy the path to the interface. Okay. And it should have the same constructor. You can copy it from the yellow class. So I have something like this. So everything is done. Our color classes have something to be injected in, and that is brightness. And we have defined the interface in our API, but we can write some implementation of this brightness in our model class. Let us write implementation for 3 classes. Let us write for medium, that is medium, brightness. So this should implement our brightness interface. So we can copy the path here. So we have class medium. Let us import our interface. To implement brightness. And that is all. Let us create for high and low also. This is for high. And it is using the same interface. So it implements the brightness interface also. And let's write for low. It's for low brightness, and it is importing the same interface, and should be implemented here. So we have 3 implementations for the brightness interface. So the next thing now is to go to our agreement, our di.xml, to define the default setting for the agreement, that is for the brightness. You can see that from here to here we are defining this default implementation of our APIs. We define the default implementation for pencil API, we use pencil class. For the color API we use yellow, and for the size we use normal. But this time around we'll be defining for our brightness interface, and let us also use medium. So for the interface brightness, we'll be using a class medium. Let's get the path to this class. This is our dir.xml. So the default implementation of the brightness interface is class medium. So let us check this in our browser. Now what we are doing is that we have like 2 layers now. Our pencil depends on color and size, and also color is now depending on brightness now. So let's see what we are going to see on the browser if we try to print out our pencil. Let's check our controller. This is a controller. So in the controller, instead of printing students, we are having pencil this time around. So let's equate this to pencil. So we have pencil. So let's see our result. But before doing that, let's clean the cache. By now, we should be seeing the default implementation for brightness. And if you want to see the default implementation for everything, let us comment this, so that we'll be seeing default implementations for all the dependencies, for color, for size, and for brightness. Let us start from here. So let's clean the cache. So we have to reload our browser. It's taking some time. Okay, as you can see, this is our pencil class, and it is taking the color, which is one of the dependencies of the pencil. It is taking the default setting, this is yellow, and also the brightness, it is also a dependency of color. So the default brightness is medium, and our size, the default setting is normal. So from this step, let's move to the next step. Here we're able to move another step forward. That is, we override some of the values. In our model pencil class, instead of using yellow, which is the default color, we are using red, and instead of using size, which is medium, we are using big. This is the second level. So let's see the values now. So we have red here, so which has override the previous value, and we have big here. So our third level now, which is the virtual types, is assuming that if I'm using a yellow pencil, a buyer is now requesting for a high brightness yellow pencil. That is the specification. So to write it, first of all, let us state it here that we need a yellow pencil and not a red pencil. We want a yellow pencil, but we have to change the dependency of the yellow pencil from being medium to high. So what we have to do now is to create what is called a virtual type. So this virtual type, you can name it any class. Let us call it virtual type also. So we are creating a virtual type of what? Is a type of the yellow color we have. We want to create, is like we want an extension of this yellow color. The extension should now take another dependency which is different from medium. So the type is of type yellow, color yellow. So but this time around, the arguments, instead of using the argument brightness, the brightness which should be medium before, I want to change it to another class. So I want to use the class I for the brightness now. So let's copy the path to brightness I. This is I. So instead of using the default setting, I want to use another class. So but before that, we have to set our XSI type. So the type is an object. And instead of using the default settings for yellow, which is medium, I'm using I. It is very simple. So instead of using the default setting of brightness, which is medium, I will be using I. So what I will have to do next is that in my color argument in pencil, let us copy it below this so that we can get it very clearly. In my color argument, instead of using type yellow, I have created another virtual type which extends the yellow class, but this time around it is taking I as the argument of the brightness. So instead of using the type of yellow now, the object yellow class, I will not be using yellow again, but I will use my newly created virtual type, which I have named virtual type here. So it means what I have successfully done is, instead of using yellow, I'm using a virtual type. So anytime I have any pencil which is a yellow color, it will not be using the default settings of the brightness, rather it will be using another brightness which is declared to be I. I've successfully changed the dependency of the yellow color from being the default settings to another setting. So let us check our value now. And if you reload the page now, we'll still be having the type to be yellow color, but the yellow color will not be using the default brightness. As you can see, we still have a yellow color, but the brightness of the yellow color has now been changed from being medium to being high. This is what virtual type is meant to do. That is, anytime you see a pencil that depends on a yellow color, don't use the default settings of brightness, use another brightness which is high. But there is something that is very important here, and here these conditions must be met, and the condition is that pencil must depend on yellow color and the yellow color must depend on the brightness. It means if I'm using another color which is not yellow, this brightness will not be used. It is going to take the default brightness. For example, in my settings now, if I'm changing the type of color to be used from yellow, if I'm using a red pencil now, so it means this virtual is going to be a red pencil. So, and if I do that, I will not be having the default settings for brightness. This is what I'm saying. If I'm using a red pencil now, instead of the virtual type, I'm using a red pencil. Since the two conditions are not met, although red depends on brightness, but our pencil is not depending on yellow. In this case, the red is going to use the default brightness. So let's see. So if we refresh our browser, we will see that it will be using a red pencil, a red color pencil, but the brightness is the default setting. This is what we are seeing. It is using a red pencil, but the brightness is medium. So the basic explanation is just that the virtual pencil that we created is of type yellow. So anytime you use a virtual pencil, it is going to assume you are using a yellow pencil, but you are changing the argument of the yellow pencil from the default settings to the value you are giving it in the virtual type. And in our own case, we are setting the object to be high and not medium. Another thing that is very important here is that if I have another object that depends on yellow, this object is not pencil. In our previous class, we created a new object which is book. Book depends on color, and now our color depends on brightness. But since we did not declare the virtual types on book, it means that book is going to use the default settings, which is for color to be using yellow, for size to be using normal, and for brightness it's going to be using medium, because the two conditions are not met. The conditions are it must be a pencil class which depends on a yellow color. In our own case now, we have a book class, not a pencil class. Let us test it. We can copy the part of our pencil, and instead of using a pencil now, we'll be using a book. We'll be creating a class book. So this is not a pencil again, this is a book. So let us clean our cache and load it in our browser. So you have to refresh our browser. You should be seeing the values now. Yeah. So what we have now is a book class, and it is taking the default settings. That is, for color it is taking yellow. For brightness, since you know that color also depends on brightness, it is taking a default setting which is medium. And for size also, it is taking the default setting which is normal. So this is what virtual type does in Magento.